Okay, now I had a look online and there are a few videos, and first thing is apology for the quality of this video, not bothering with the tripod or anything because I'm busy working. Anyway, Apple Mac, PC, all set up so I can switch monitors etc. Apple Mac's great for video stuff, particularly when you're using Firewire. However, I just recently got a Mighty Mouse. Now, looking online, there are quite a few problems with the Mighty Mouse. This particular one seemed to work perfectly with one exception: you could not scroll up. Now, one of the solutions I found, stripped the whole thing down, cleaned it. I'm licensed to handle industrial methylated spirits, has no dye in it at all. It's great for cleaning circuit boards, all that sort of stuff. You've got to be very cautious, and Apple apparently do not recommend you use any fluids at all. But stripping this apart, this was the only way to fix it. Cleaned the ball, did the usual recommendation of rolling it upside down for a dry clean against a piece of paper, but that did not help because the problem was into the mechanical part of the electronics. Okay, the first check. You hear little clicks. It's probably hard to hear on the video, but there's wee clicks when you roll that way. There's now wee clicks when I roll that way, and left and right. However, what I was getting was only clicks on 3 of the axis rolls. So it was not letting me scroll down web pages etc. That was the problem with this one. If you've got other problems with your Apple Macs, don't know anything about them. This is a new venture for me going into Macs. Anyway, first thing is, the small plastic collar at the top of the connector slides up. Difficult seeing this lighting, but once you pull this up, you can release, and you shouldn't do this with power ideally, but once these are pulled up you can do a release and the cable itself, the flat cable, will come out. Now I'm going to see the camera just balanced here, whether I can demonstrate that. Okay, I'll just turn the video screen round a bit, make it easier to do this. And within that, just very careful not touching the circuit board, just the plastic collar comes up, and that's just a friction catch for the flat cable. Just carefully pull it out. Now, it may or may not have been audible when it was recording, but now that there's no power in there, you won't get any clicks. Now there's 3 tiny little black wheels on the end of a shaft. When you scroll the ball towards one of the wheels, it rotates, and that's the sensor in there. So if I scroll up, only that one rotates. If I scroll towards that side, only that one rotates. If I scroll down this, and this is the one that was faulty, I scroll down towards that one, that now rotates. It's now working. I've checked it. And equally, if you scroll towards that one, it works. So one of the checks without opening up your mouse is to listen with power on the mouse, hold up to your ear, and listen and hear if you get click, 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 tiny little clicky sounds as you scroll. It's not just the friction that I get just now, but it's a wee electronic click once the power's on this. If so, this part should be working. Problem something else, I don't know anything about it. Now there are other bits online which show you how to take the mouse apart. They're actually bonded in, and you can't really see it from this half, but on here and with the collar there's little bits of sort of glue welding that holds it in. In my case, all I did was got tough nails, slid the nail in, pinged it round, opened it out. Various ways of gluing it back together, kind of use a bit of common sense on that. This is the other connector which I've disconnected, and again that connector is the same type of thing. It's a push fit. The collar comes up, make sure it's fully up both sides. All it is a wee wedge that grips the cable. Collar comes up and that comes off. These bits, either side the lugs, they take the pivot, and it's just a very careful, gently springing that apart, and you can jump it clear. So I'm now on the stage of I'm going to reassemble it. There's 3 screws which hold the mouse ball in. I've pulled a gentle bit of cloth through there just to clean the hole entirely. So first thing is we'll put the mouse tracker ball back in, holding in gently, taking nice small screwdriver would be ideal, but this happens to be the one I've got to hand. Don't want to over tighten these sort of things. Just very carefully firming it down just tight enough. I'm very fortunate about this. This is one I bought on eBay and it was supposedly absolutely perfect, just like brand new. It arrived and it was faulty. A wee bit of communication with the seller, but they said no refunds because you've cleaned it. Now, before I used industrial methylated spirits to clean the switch. I say we used to use that stuff all the time when I worked in electronics on all sorts of switch gears, circuit boards, all the rest of it. Don't use normal methylated spirits, it has a dye in it. But this stuff is specifically for cleaning films, all sorts of stuff. Anyway, that should now be okay. No clicks because it's not powered up, and then we've got to connect these ones in. So we've got the pivot points, and they'll go round that way. It's the first time for this, so let's see it. Yep, very carefully in. Should just spring it slightly apart, and it should jump in and pivot. Remember, you don't want to break these lugs off, so you've got to be cautious with this sort of thing. There's not a lot of room needed there, it's just enough to clear it. Let's see what's the best lever. Should just spring in. Yep, looks like it. Yep, and that should open like that, and then you've got to get the cabling in and down. Now you can decide whether it's easier to put the cabling in before you clip this together or afterwards. Bear in mind, this is the first time I've tried this, and I definitely think it's going to be a lot easier clipping the cables together first. So this is just a reversal of what I did earlier. Screwdriver, fork, probably anything, pair of very fine pliers, just in, slightly levering this down just to spring the peg, and then it jumps over. Okay, so I've now got my orientation, I know which way this all comes down, work out which one's easiest, and I think probably that one coming in first. Yep, so I'll lift the Mighty Mouse ball cable to under, that comes down, check the connectors are on the correct side, make sure the lock, the plastic bit is lifted so it's free to slide in. This is zero force insertion, just gently sliding that down, making sure it's aligned all the way in, and then pressing down the lock bar. That should be okay. Now, because I'm doing this powered up, I can actually see if the mouse works. Yes, it works on there. Next thing is the tracker ball part, and again just try and line up with the camera so we can see what we're doing. The gate, if you like, the wedge is up, so again it's a zero force insertion, and then just very carefully drop this in. It's quite finicky with big paws. You could use plastic tweezers, would probably be okay, but I would strongly advise against using metal ones if you don't want to damage the outer foil, the insulation part. And it's kind of not only tricky with just using the two hands, but also trying to hold it up so the camera can see. There, zero insertion force, get it all the way down, lined up. Yes, now we've got click sounds, and get the other side down, make sure it's fully locked. Again, I wouldn't advise people to use a razor blade, but I'm just using tools I've got immediately to hand. Now, the check would be, again, listening for a crackly sound. Yes, yes, left and right. And if we look at, in the background, the Apple monitor, just move this a wee bit so we can see, there we go. You see the monitor is now scrolling up and down, which it wasn't doing before. It was always scrolling up, and strangely enough, it didn't matter which way you did it, it would still just scroll up. But now it's scrolling up and down. And from the sound, I would say the left and right will be working perfectly as well. Okay, so we've got the cables in, the plastic locks on the flat cables, they're fully down. Going back to our wee wedges, tucking in one side on the pivot, other side just about lined up. Because it's convenient, I'm just going to use the screwdrivers just to slightly spring open the case. That's it in. Pivoting in nicely. That goes in, and now the bit that I haven't worked out quite yet to do will be the touch of glue or whatever, but at the moment, just for the sake of this, just closing that down. It doesn't spring in properly, so that will need to be glued. I would tend to use a glue that you can separate again in the future should you need to open it. You can also weld it. If you don't mind messing up your mouse a bit, you could do tiny wee welds with a soldering iron, but the best thing would just be tiny touch on the similar position to where they were welded before, tiny position, bit of glue just to hold it in. Okay, so point the camera at the monitor, and I've got a mouse. It's now, once I get the alignment up, bring the screen on the video camera around so we can see what we're doing. And there's the I-beam for the mouse, moving fully, and scrolling up, scrolling down. Problem sorted.